Persepolis or Pars, in ancient Persian. The name of Persepolis at the time of construction, Pars ancient Persian, means city of the Persians because it was attributed to the province of Persia. The Greeks called it Persepolis, Greek, pi epsilon rho sigma pi omicron lambda iota sigma, meaning city, Perses, pi rho sigma eta sigma, Persian. The Greek word is reflected in most European languages today. In Sassanid times, Persepolis was called Sadstone, 100 columns. In contemporary Persian, this building is called Persepolis or the Royal Palace of Jamshid, the mythical king of Iran. The French tourist Tavernier, who traveled to Iran several times during the Safavid era, refers to Persepolis as the 40 minarets. Ferdowsi's Shahnameh states, Jamshid was a just and beautiful kingdom that established Nowruz and ruled Iran for 700 years. Orangs or his throne was so large that they carried a court. Hundreds of years after the invasion of Alexander and the Arabs, and at a time when the memory of the Achaemenid kings was forgotten, people passing by the ruins of Pārsa saw engraved images of the throne raised on the hands of the people, and because they could not cuneiform to read the inscriptions engraved on the stones, they thought that this was the same Orang Jamshid that Ferdowsi mentioned in his Shahnameh. That is why this place was named Persepolis. Later, when archaeologists were able to translate the cuneiform inscription, they discovered that the original name was Pars. In the Islamic period, this place was respected and it was called 1,000 pillars and 40 minarets, and it was associated with personalities such as Suleiman the Prophet and Jamshid. In Greek, Persepolis, or poetically Persepolis, is a nickname for Athena, the goddess of wisdom, industry, and war, meaning the destroyer of cities. This title has been used by Achilles, a Greek poet of the 5th century BC, in the form of genius and play on words, about the Persian city. Persepolis is located in the center of Fars province, 10 kilometers north of Marvdasht and 57 kilometers from Shiraz. The altitude of Persepolis is 1,770 meters above sea level. The eastern side of this complex of palaces is located on Mount Ramat, and the other three sides are inside the Marvdasht plain. Persepolis is located on a stone platform that is between 8 and 18 meters above the level of Marvdasht plain. Dimensions of Persepolis are 455 meters, western front, 300 meters, northern front, 430 meters, eastern front, 390 meters, southern front. The length of Persepolis is also equal to the length of the Acropolis in Athens, but its width is 4 to 5 times that of the Acropolis. The large inscription of Darius the Great on the wall of the southern front of Persepolis clearly testifies that there was no building in this place before. The full area of the palaces of Persepolis is 125,000 square meters. The oldest part of Persepolis is based on archaeological findings from 518 BC. According to various historical sources, the construction of Persepolis began about 25 centuries ago on the western slope of Mount Ramat or Mitra and in the time of Darius the Great, and then continued by his successors with changes in its original structure. According to the inscriptions discovered in Persepolis, countless architects, artists, craftsmen, workers, women and men participated in the construction of this magnificent building, who, in addition to receiving salaries, also benefited from labor insurance benefits. According to a legend, the construction of this large and beautiful collection took 120 years. One of the architectural arts in Persepolis is that the ratio of the height of the doors to their width and also the ratio of the height of the columns to the distance between the two columns is golden. The golden ratio is an important ratio in geometry that exists in nature. This represents the art of the ancient Iranians in architecture. The complex of Persepolis palaces was set on fire by Alexander the Great in the year 330 BC, and all its buildings were destroyed. One of the surviving and half-ruined buildings is the main entrance of Persepolis, which is known as Haitis Palace, and consists of a central hall with 36 columns and 3 12-column porches in the northern, southern and eastern parts, whose northern and eastern porches are by stairs. They are connected to the opposite yards. The height of the plateau at the site of Haitis Palace is 16 meters and the height of its columns is 18 meters. This collection is registered in the list of historical monuments of Iran and also in the list of UNESCO World Heritage. Travelogue or Book of Pythagoras, born 608 BC, died 509 BC. Is one of the oldest sources about Persepolis. He, in chapters 102 to 110 of the Persian translation, described it as a huge building and said that hundreds of people are completing it. When completed, it will be the largest building in the world. During the Achaemenid period, anyone who built a dug or lankaras or rebuilt a lankaras was forgiven a tax of 5 generations. The travelogue of Pythagoras mentions the refined gardens irrigated with doubles, in which Darius and Cyrus spent an hour farming. He mentions trained horses that were called Persians. In the books of historians of the Islamic era from the 4th century onwards, the construction of Persepolis is mentioned as a huge building and the wonder of the greatness of the building led to it for a long time to Jamshid or Suleiman the Prophet, who were both considered one, and the builders attribute it to demons and goblins, and even write that demons have carved statues and images of their kings on the walls. In Masudi's time, 4th century it was called Suleiman ibn Daud Mosque, but Masudi thought that it was an ancient building that was later built by Hamay, daughter of Bahman, son of Isfandi. In the palace built by his son Abu Nasr in Shiraz, Daylami moved a number of doors and gates of Thatcher Palace, Darius the Great Palace, and installed them there. Muhammad ibn Mahmud Tusi mentioned the title of Dar al-Mulk Suleiman and spoke about Suleiman Mosque and its designs and carvings and, like his Takri, attributed the construction of this great building to demons and fairies. At the same time, Ibn Bakai considered this place as Jamshid Palace and while describing it, it lists some of the medical properties of the materials used in it, which were well known among the people of that period. What Hamda al-Mostafi has quoted from previous writers about Persepolis in the 8th century shows the continuation of previous beliefs in this regard. The first scientific excavations in Persepolis were carried out by the German Ernst Emil Herzfeld in 1931 under the supervision of Reza Shah. He was sent by the Institute of Oriental Studies at the University of Chicago. His findings are still kept in this institution. Herzfeld believed that the reason for the construction of Persepolis was the need for a royal and glorious atmosphere, a symbol for the Persian Empire and a place to celebrate special events, especially Nowruz. For historical reasons, Persepolis was built on the site of the Persian Empire, although it was not the center of the empire at that time. The architecture of Persepolis has been considered due to the use of wooden columns. The architects of Persepolis used stone only when the largest Lebanese cedars or Indian teak did not have the necessary dimensions to support the roof, while the bottom and top of the columns were made of stone. An Iranian-Italian expedition was exploring the site. Alireza Ascari Chaverty was the Iranian director of Shiraz University and the Italian director of the program was Francesco Collieri of the University of Bologna. Current situation. Ronald Reagan visits Persepolis. In the new era, with the return and emergence of a sense of patriotism among Iranians and honoring the past of this land, Persepolis gained much prestige. During the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty, much attention was paid to this building and Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi held celebrations of 2,500 years of the Persian Empire in this ancient structure. With the beginning of the Islamic Revolution, this structure was called the Relic of the Kings and was greatly disrespected. For example, Sayyid Kalkali, the first religious judge of the revolutionary courts, set out to destroy it, but failed due to the resistance of the people and the staff of Persepolis. But today, Persepolis can be considered the most lovable structure in Iran and among Iranians, as well as a symbol of the glory of the past. After the Iranian Revolution of 1978, some extremists tried to destroy Persepolis by attacking Persepolis, but failed due to the opposition and resistance of local officials and people. There are reports that Sayyid Kalkali intended to demolish the tombs of Ferdowsi and Persepolis, after the demolition of Reza Shah's tomb, but this was opposed by the provisional government, including Minister of Culture Parvaz Varjavand, Fars Governor Nusratullah Amini and Ayatollah Sayyid Mahmud Talgani. And the resistance of the people of Marvdasht and the staff of Pārsa failed in this matter. Shiraz Dam is built 95 kilometers north of Shiraz, 50 kilometers from the ancient city of Persepolis and about 10 kilometers from Pasorgity on the Shiraz River. The Plovdiv River flowed between the two UNESCO World Heritage Sites, Persepolis and Pasorgity, next to the tomb of Cyrus in the heart of the Bolagi Strait. There has been a lot of opposition to the water intake of this dam. Protesters against the flooding of Shiraz Dam believe that the flooding of the dam will have adverse consequences for the cultural and natural heritage of Pasorgity Plain and Bolagi Strait. Unfortunately, this dam was completed in April 2007. Dehydrated. It is worth mentioning that the useful life of the dam is estimated at 30 years. But experts considered the destructive impact of this dam to be very high and announced that a 30-year project of useful life will cause destruction in national monuments and hit them. Due to numerous droughts as well as misuse of groundwater resources, a critical land subsidence occurred around the Persepolis and Nag-Shiraz tomb complexes, which could be dangerous for this complex in the future. Architects, artists and specialists in the construction of Persepolis were composed of different nations under the influence of Achaemenid kings such as Assyrians, Egyptians, Eritreans, Babylonians, Lydians, Ionians, Hindus, Scythians, etc. Over time, a number of the pillars of the 100-pillar palace gate in Persepolis have survived events such as earthquakes. At first glance, they seem to be integrated, but in reality they are fragmented and stacked on top of each other. The secret of their stability against earthquakes is at the junction of these pieces, where the two pieces of the column are connected by molten lead. In addition to strengthening the connection between the two pieces of the column, this lead has played an important role in the structure's resistance to earthquakes. Lead is a malleable and soft metal that reacts and does not break when an earthquake occurs. This is the role that is given to the spring next to the columns in modern buildings. Measurement of length and numbers. Main article, Measuring Length and Numbers in Persepolis Architecture. Crowder Research, Nelander, A. Hess, Mrs. and Mrs. Tilia and Michael Ralph have illuminated the longitudinal scales in Persepolis. The smallest unit of measurement is a finger, which at today's scale is 22 millimeters. Other units were floor or grip equal to 4 fingers or 87 millimeters. Persepolis step equal to 16 fingers or 347 to 348 millimeters. Rash, gauze, is equal to 24 fingers or 521 to 522 millimeters. The best case to study from the Persepolis step scale is the eastern staircase of Apadana, which in a sense the logical relationship between the length and width of its parts is defined as follows. The front of the stairs can be generally divided into northern parts, like soldiers and elders, central, front moonlight, and south, like gift givers. Each of them is 78 steps long and 9 steps high. The middle part of the front moonlight is 9 steps high and twice its length, and its 2 symmetrical stair slopes each have a 30-foot-long base. From the edge of the front moonlight to the beginning of the slope of each of the symmetrical steps of the rear moonlight, exactly 78 steps are taken, and in all these numbers we find a coefficient of the number 3, which was sacred in ancient Iran. Numbers 3, 7 and 9 are considered sacred numbers, and the study of this image has proved the following in Persepolis. Apadana has a total of 72 columns, which is equal to 72 seasons of Yasna Avesta, 72 wrestling disciplines, kasti, that were worn by the ancient Iranians. The common motifs of the palace, the 100 pillars in the tombs show the king and 6 of his companions, which, like Ahura Mazda among the 6 great angels, are believed by the ancient Persians to confirm that the Achaemenids were Zoroastrians. The Great Northwestern Staircase has 111 steps, that is, 3 times the number 1, which is the product of 37 times the number 3, and the number of houses on the royal road from Susa to Sard was exactly 111. Laying the stones on top of each other did not use mortar, but the 2 overlapping surfaces were scrapped so that they were flattened and mounted well on top of each other, leaving only the middle part of the 2 surfaces rough so that both surfaces would stick well together. Many symbols have been used to join the stones. For example, on the pillar they wanted to erect, they carved several identical marks on the edges of adjacent pieces before they were lifted, and these points fell on top of each other when the pieces were mounted, creating the desired line and design. Joining was done in several ways. One was a lock and a pair, which highlighted a part of a boulder and at the same time made a hole in another boulder and glued the 2 stones together, but the way that was used more was that in 2 adjacent stones, 2 dimples were connected, and they were tied together with an iron rod, and molten lead was poured and polished on it. These packages were made in the form of swallows, cylinders, pens and heads. Architects and artists who were involved in the construction of Persepolis decorated the maps in 3 ways. One is the attachment of precious metals in the form of crowns, earrings, collars, etc. to the original pattern and by holes that are made on both sides of the object to be jeweled. Second, painting and silvering the main decorations of clothes, crowns and hats with needles, in a very delicate way, an example of which can be seen on the doors of Darius' palace, Thatcher, and the harem. The third is a painting, examples of which are found in the palace of 3 doors and 100 columns. In the lithographs of Persepolis, no one can be seen in a state of humiliation, and the representatives of nations are not as losers or slaves, but all equally members of the great world community, and all nations from the Medes to Indians, Tunisians, Africans and Greeks are all independent and they are self-reliant. In the Persepolis petroglyphs, the distance of each nation is separated by a cypress tree, which is a sacred tree. The classification of the representatives of nations is based on their culture and history or their distance and proximity, such as the Medes, Elamites, Kosas, Babylonians, Assyrians. It is the guide of nations, Persian and material or Elamite, which is designated hand in hand to guide other nations, and the people of all nations were free to use their clothes, culture and language. No attempt can be made to show superiority or pride of the Persians over other nations. Representatives of the nations have extended their arms to each other as a sign of friendship. Having a cane is a sign of high position. A long striped hat is a sign of military status, and a simple long hat is a sign of greatness, and a short cylindrical hat is a sign of a court official and a royal guard and servants. The lithograph offered by the people of Persepolis is a lithographic design that can be seen in different parts of the Achaemenid palaces in Persepolis. This design shows the offerings, each of which goes up the stairs carrying a gift. This design has been used in Haitis Palace, private palace of Xerxes Shah, and Thatcher Palace, private palace of Darius the Great. One of the unique features of Achaemenid masonry and architecture is carved and engraved boulders that are placed in the walls of stairs passages that lead to the halls and palaces of celebrations and ceremonies. The entrance to the platform is two steps facing each other in the northwestern part of the complex, which are like hands that bend their elbows and try to lift their enthusiasts off the ground and place them in their chests. These stairs have 111 wide and short stairs, 10 centimeters high, on each side. Contrary to many historians' claims that the low height of the stairs was due to the fact that horses could also climb the stairs, they made the stairs shorter than usual for the comfort and grandeur of the guests, whose pictures were painted on the walls of Persepolis in luxurious and long clothes, be maintained when climbing. At the top of the stairs is the entrance to Persepolis, the Great Gate or the Gate of Xerxes or the Gate of the Nations. The height of this building is 10 meters. This building had a main entrance and two exits, and today the remains of its gates are still standing. On the west and east gates, there is a design of winged men and a design of two stone cows with human heads. These gates are decorated at the top with 6 cuneiform inscriptions. After mentioning the name of Ahura Mazda, these inscriptions briefly state that everything that is beautiful is done at the request of Ahura Mazda. There are 2 exit gates, one facing south and the other facing east, and the south gate faces Achaemenid Palace, or the Grand Bar Palace. Achaemenid Palace or Bar Palace is one of the oldest palaces in Persepolis. This palace, which was built by the order of Darius the Great, was used to hold Nowruz celebrations and to receive representatives of countries dependent on the presence of the king. The palace is connected to the Takht-e Palace or Mirror Palace by a staircase in its southwestern part. This palace is square, 560 meters 560, and has 6 rows of 6 columns that support its roof with a height of more than 20 meters. So, the total number of columns of the 3 porches of Achaemenid, 36, plus the columns, hall, is 72, and the same situation has been found in the Achaemenid of Darius in Susa. Currently, out of 72 columns, only 14 of them are standing. The pillars inside the palace are square. Achaemenid Palace has 2 sets of stairs in the north and east. The eastern stairs of the palace, which consist of 2 stairs, one facing north and one facing south, have carved motifs on the side wall. The steps to the north have carvings of high-ranking materialist and Persian military commanders holding lotus flowers in their hands. In front of the military commanders, members of the Immortal Guard are seen paying their respects. In the upper row of this wall, the row of people can be seen carrying gifts and approaching the palace. On the wall of the stairs facing south, there are pictures of representatives of different countries with gifts in their hands. Thatcher or Tachara means winter house. This palace was also built by the order of Darius the Great and was his own palace. An inscription reads, "I Darius made this Thatcher." The palace is also known as the Museum of Calligraphy, due to the fact that from the Achaemenid period to the Qajar period, various Persian inscriptions can be seen in this palace. The main part of the palace was built by Darius the Great, and the porch and the southern stone staircase by Xerxes and the western stone staircase by Marvdasht. The palace is built on a plateau 2.4 meters high. The palace has an area of 29 by 40 meters and its central room is a square with a side of 15 meters. 12 columns were used in it. The frame of the doors is decorated with reliefs depicting the king and his 2 servants, one carrying a canopy and the other a shawl. Other stair reliefs show servants carrying animals and covered containers for banquets. Exquisite parts of this building are the bedrock made of Egyptian pattern and the stones that are polished like a mirror. According to crafter, there probably was a garden to the south of Darius's palace. Council House. This place is called the Council Palace or the Central Hall. The king is probably arguing with the elders here. According to the carved designs, the king entered through one of the gates and left through the other 2 gates. This is why it is called the Council Palace, because there are 2 human heads here, which are not elsewhere, and the human head is a symbol of thought. Haitis Palace. This palace, which was the private palace of Xerxes, is located in the highest part of the Persepolis plateau. This palace is connected to the Queen's palace through two sets of stairs. It is possible that the fire started from this place because of the Athenians' hatred of Xerxes because of the burning of Athens by him. The yellow color of the rocks indicates the depletion of water inside the rocks due to heat. This is a small place with 6 by 6 columns. Due to the severe destruction, not much information is available about this palace. Many have referred to it as a mysterious palace. Haitis means high place, and because Xerxes' second wife's name was Haitis, he named his palace Haitis. This palace is located in the southernmost part of the plateau, and many parts of the floor are mountains. 100-stone palace. This sector needs to be expanded. You can help by adding it. The palace is about 46,000 square feet, about 4,300 square meters, and its roof is supported by 100 columns, each 14 meters high. Treasury. The complex consists of a 99-column hall, a 100-column hall, a number of halls, rooms and 2 backyards. The complex of treasury buildings was separated from the rest by a thick fence and a wide street. According to ancient Greek historians, after the fall of Persepolis, Alexander transferred gold, silver and valuables to the treasury of Persepolis, which was the largest treasury of the Achaemenids, with 3,000 camels and a large number of horses and mules. The treasury was built by order of Darius the Great, and Xerxes made reforms in it. Most of the vessels, sculptures and especially the 8 famous stone tablets of Xerxes have been obtained from this place. In previous scientific excavations in this place, a large number of cuneiform tablets and Elamite language related to workers' wages have been found. The royal chamber discovered at the site shows Xerxes, not the formerly thought Darius the Great, sitting on a throne in his most formal garb. He holds a royal staff in his right hand and a lotus flower, which is a symbol of the Achaemenid kings, in his left hand. Behind the crown prince stands with the lotus flower in his left hand and holds his right hand in high esteem. Then there is a court official, followed by the king's gunsmith. In front of the king are 2 incinerators, and the chief of ceremonies reports respect. The ceremony took place under a chador, royal tent, surrounded by 4 guards. According to research, the main place of this role was the central part of the Apadana stairs. Ka-or-Kach is one of the palaces of Persepolis, which is located in the southwest of Takht-e and in the west of Haitis Palace. The painted staircase that leads to this palace from both sides is now in a semi-ruined state. The main staircase, according to the surviving written fragment, belongs to a building that was started by Xerxes and completed by Ardashiri. Suhudar Palace, the council hall, the gate of the kings, the 3 gates, the 3 doors or the central palace are located in the center of the Persepolis royal palace. This palace leads to other palaces through 3 gates and several corridors, and for this reason it is also called the central palace or 3 doors. Because on the steps of this palace, Persian nobles have been depicted who go to meet the ruler in a friendly and informal manner, and also because of the type of use and location of the palace, it is sometimes called the council hall. The building of this palace was previously attributed to Darius the Great, but there are good reasons that its complete construction was done by Ardashiri. Queen's Palace and Museum. This palace was built by Xerxes and is located at a lower height than other buildings. Part of the palace was excavated and rebuilt in 1931 by the renowned Orientalist Ernst Camille Herzfeld, and is now used as a museum and headquarters for the Persepolis facility. The Achaemenid Museum building in Persepolis is the oldest building in Iran that has been restored and is dedicated to the museum. This building is one of the palaces of Persepolis. Parts of the building that is currently used as a museum include a porch, 2 galleries and a hall. On the porch of the museum, which is located on the north side of the building and where the entrance of the museum is located, there are two pillars, room wall and porch, the base of the building made of stone and brick. It weighs about 80 tons on the front and sides. Each of these two piers is the largest monolithic stone used in Persepolis. The roof of the porch is supported by 8 wooden pillars with 2 columns of cows. Persepolis Museum was inaugurated on May 28, 2002, coinciding with May 18, 2002, World Museum Day. Modern architecture. With the coming to power of Reza Shah and the need to launch modern institutions such as banks, judiciary, government offices and the like, a new type of architecture emerged. Based on this type of architecture, the structure of the building is designed based on modern architecture, but in its decorations and views, the architecture of ancient Iran, especially Persepolis, has been used. Haitis Palace, Bank Melli Iran Fund Building and Achaemenid High School Building are prominent examples of such architecture. The facade, capitals with the symbol of mythical animals, stone carvings and the role of Achaemenid soldiers and stone inscriptions. Architects in that period tried to reconstruct the lost glory of Iran by following the example of ancient architecture. The Haitis Palace building is considered to be the most complete sampling of Pārsa and Persepolis palaces.